I think that the best way to really get into a relationship is to really fully comprehend the fact that no one's perfect and that you yourself are also full of imperfection, and to actually embrace that, like be vulnerable.
You're listening to With You Podcast, where we talk about real relationships and life transitions. I'm David.
And I'm Tara, and this season we'll be exploring marriage.
Yeah, we'll be hearing couples tell their stories from different ages, stages, and backgrounds.
And we all have a lot to learn from each other, so let's get started.
Sounds good. All right. Well, we're really glad you're here with us this episode. We're so excited to have some friends of ours that are willing to talk to us about their marriage.
Yeah. Hi, guys.
Hi.
So would you guys like to introduce yourselves? You can just say your names. And if you want to say how you know us, you could give that context.
So I'm Vallari, and
Hi, I'm Ruchir.
and we know you guys because our son and our daughter both had your kids as their classmates and friends, and it's just been wonderful knowing you guys that way, and also as friends, I guess. Now we are friends.
That's right.
We are. It's been a while now, too. We have spent a lot of hours together on the sidelines of lacrosse games and Girl Scout meetings and everything else.
I did the math. It's been over 20 years that we've done life together.
Yes.
Oh,
That's
wow.
amazing.
That's
Oh,
a
how's
lot.
that
Incredible.
possible?
Well, our your oldest son and our son, they're 25 now. So
Oh, yeah, that's
Right.
right.
we still look like we're in our 20s, all four of us.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah. So tell us first, what was your wedding date? How long have you been married?
It's going to be 30 years next year, right? If I'm counting right. Yeah, I
Yes.
think it's going to be 30 years next year, and I'm amazed that I got that math correct.
Yeah.
There should always be applause for husbands getting
Yes.
that date right.
Coming up on
Yeah.
30 years. So we kind of like to start before we get into your story. I have so many things I can't wait to ask you about how it started. But before that, how just kind of your idea of what marriage was. We think it's really interesting to see how we were shaped by other marriages, whether it was family or friends or people we looked up to.
Yeah, you want me to go first? Yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
go
I'll
ahead.
go first. Yeah. Look, I mean, I grew up in India, although I moved here when I was a teenager, and so I like to say that my formative years were in the U.S. and somewhat in India. But the models that I had as a result were really of that generation and predominantly from my parents and kind of their friends and growing up in India. And their marriage was, well, number one, it was for life. It was sort of a taboo to kind of see separations and divorces and so on. And even the examples that we kind of saw where couples may not be getting together, getting along, they kind of just carried on, right? They had this thing of, um, keep calm and carry on, or just sort of carry on.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
Or not calm and carry on.
not calm and carry on. And so that was sort of the model. But it was also, at least for me growing up, sort of, I never thought that, I would go through life without having a partner and a marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And that was sort of an expected or the natural kind of course of life. So maybe over the years, as our kids have grown and as things have evolved, I've seen many friends and others kind of think about things differently, and I certainly did not. I mean, I certainly thought, okay, this is the thing, and I've got to eventually get married and so on, have a family and all that. That was sort of just the thing that we were brought up with. But Valerie, I don't know what your thoughts were about marriage.
I would say that, growing up in India, and, marriages are arranged. Like my mom and dad had never set eyes on each other. It was on the wedding day that they saw each other. Same thing with Ruchir's parents.
Yeah, my
They
parents.
saw each other for the very first time on the day of the marriage.
Oh,
Wow.
really?
Yes.
I would
And-
like to hear them tell their stories.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes. That
Val,
would be amazing.
Val, could you tell us a little bit about the matchmaking process? So they didn't
Absolutely.
see, how does that happen? Because you don't see each other until the ceremony. How do you get paired up?
I will tell you exactly how that happens. So, the way this happens is all through elders. They try to match up the socioeconomic background. And then the father of the daughter, like in my mom's case, I'm just speaking about my own story and my mom's story.
Yeah.
So, her dad, actually, in fact, they lived in Trinidad and Tobago. My grandfather was, the Indian government had actually asked him to go set up these Hindu colleges and schools in the all of West Indies, so like British Guyana, French Guyana, Trinidad, Tobago, Suriname. So he had to go into all of these spots and actually open up schools and colleges. That's what his job was. He was
Wow.
sort of a cultural ambassador. And I don't know if you know this, but a lot of slaves were taken from northern India, like the states of Uttar Pradesh and Bihar,
Mm-hmm.
and they were taken into these West Indies colonies by the slave traders. So this is kind of an unknown fact almost, but so obviously the slavery ended and stuff like that. There were these people now, like located all throughout the West Indies, that wanted that connection with India because they're actually predominantly Hindus
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't have a way to really understand or know anything. And my grandfather, he was sort of a temple priest that the Indian government kind of hired to do this. Anyway,
Oh, wow.
long
That's a
story to
fun marriage. Yeah.
share that
No, but
my grandfather, therefore, what I was trying to say is he arrived in India from a different country. And my mom also, she kind of grew up globally, as you can understand, but she was doing her undergrad in India. So my grandfather basically got to know about my father, that he's from a similar, same Brahmin, like same caste is important. So the caste and all of that and the
mm-hmm.
socioeconomic thing. And just went and saw my dad and like, the family, and said, okay, that's it. And my mom didn't really, she didn't know what to actually say or do. I mean, she just kind of believed her dad to be doing the right thing for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's how it goes. I think that's the same
No,
thing with
I
the
was just going to
Ruchir.
jump in and say that, in those days, in that generation, it was more families selecting families that were
Mm.
Yeah.
like-minded, similar background. And so the children for whom they were influencing or sometimes making or strongly recommending what the decision was kind of went along with that process because it was sort of this screening process of families selecting like man, so they would kind of ensure some level of cultural fit, similar
Yeah.
background, education prospects, socioeconomic status, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what the process was. And of course, there was a little bit of sort of meeting or maybe a photograph or I mean those kinds of things. And if there wasn't a meeting, I mean there was some aspect of selection in that process, but there wasn't really, you
Wasn't
get to
really.
know the person or to any degree, right? Even if there was a meeting, it was very much like like a chaperone choreographed kind of a thing, and a very brief thing, one conversation or meeting, and then you're done. So the very I would say awkward to think about that process in this day and age, in those terms.
Yeah, so thinking about that, because I think here in the States, like the love marriage or selection, you kind of pick what individually you're interested in. That kind of individual piece really isn't a part of at least both of your parents' marriage. It wasn't like they had a say of, I'm looking for
Not at all.
this or I want
Yeah.
No.
this.
So there's a lot of trust in your parents too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and however that, I would say, the love part of the marriage kind of evolves was probably defined, with varying degrees of whatever once you entered into the marriage, right?
Yeah.
By the couple. I think they kind of discovered and got to know each other and kind of built that over time.
Yeah.
And I would say that our parents' generation, it was very duty driven. Like everything was duty driven. And yeah.
Do you guys feel that did evolve for your parents, since both of your parents were in the arranged marriage? Did it feel like over time they built a love that came with experience?
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, I think they definitely did, and
Definitely.
I don't know what it is about that system, but I think it's one of these things where it's sort of like, okay, well, this is it, we're in it, and so there's no turning back. And so
Yeah.
when you're in it, you kind of then basically
Sinkers.
Yeah.
figure it out together and make it work. And you build a life together, a family together, and so overdoing that and kind of progressing together is the best way I can describe it. You learn about each other, you get to hopefully express and have a bit of your own interest, and all of the normal things that kind of go on then from there
Yeah.
play out. And over that time, I think they definitely built that
I heard
with each other.
I heard someone use the metaphor for me when I was working with an Indian couple. They're like, you Americans are more like you pour gasoline on this hot fire right at the beginning, and then it all kind of then burns down real fast. Where an arranged marriage is a small little spark that's kindled over time into a bigger, more sustainable flame. And that was, I don't know if that fits, but that was kind of how it was explained to me.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely, I think, in that arrangement has a bit of a social contract element to it in the way that it starts, and then kind of the rest of it hopefully builds. And
Yeah.
So what happened then for you guys, since you were a new generation? Was there any thought for you of going that direction? Was that ever suggested for you, or
it was more than suggested. I think our parents were busy planning all of that for each of us independently, and I don't know, we were both exposed to varying degrees through that process, right?
I really wasn't, because right at I was sort of the rebellious child, or what. I mean,
I
don't know.
I
Basically,
knew
like
I liked you for a reason, Val.
But you had a lot of your parents were kind of entertaining.
No, I mean,
proposals on your behalf.
no, I thwarted them down like right away. There was no way I was gonna. I just kind of, they knew that I wasn't gonna do it. Like if there were some people that thought, hey, this would be a good proposal, you should propose this to your daughter, and I wouldn't even I knew that I wanted to select my own partner. Let's put it that way.
Okay, so you knew. Did you know that from the beginning? You didn't want any part
100%.
of the. Okay.
So
100%.
how did your parents come along and then embrace that? Because it sounds like what you're saying is they were planning on trying to do arranged marriage, and you're just like not having any of it.
So actually, I'll say that my family, we are a lot more open and informal with each other than his family. I'll let him speak for his family, but we had a very open relationship, and my parents knew exactly where I was coming from. They were very sort of, open-minded, liberal in that regard, where they were accepting of my views, and they respected that, and they said, yeah, sure, if you really think that you want to select someone, go for it. That's fine with us. Since that, but then with his parents, they are a lot more conservative, and they are very well. I'll let you. They
were definitely engaged in that process, and I think we were in our mid-20s ish when we were fortunate enough to meet each other here in Chicago, and at that time we were not, and so this is like in the early 90s. We got married in 1994, so this is like the 92, 93, that time. And so my point is that it wasn't like we were in frequent communication with them like today's internet, mobile phone, and all of it is a little bit different. And so when we would talk, whenever that was, maybe once a month or whatever the case is, long distance bills were expensive, etc. The topic would come up, right? And so even when I made one or two trips back to India to visit, the topic was like very much front and center to say, hey, we've screened, or we've met, or we want you to meet someone. And I think on my last, before we got married, but my last maybe one or two trips, maybe a year or two around that time frame, I actually went to
each other. We weren't really dating, but
I went through a little bit of, hey, let's go meet such and such. And I was sort of resisting it to say that, look, no chance, it's not for me, et cetera, et cetera. But the whole machine was in the works, and it wasn't like I was going to stop that, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of went
You had to
and,
entertain it a little bit.
yeah, I had to entertain it a little bit, engage in that process, and then convey that, look, this is really not for me. And of course, we met and we dated for about a year, so we were fortunate enough to do that, and before we declared and decided to get married and shared that with our family and all that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
right around that time frame, I do remember that this was a very active thread with our parents. They were busy. They were marching down the path, and thinking that that's the future.
You would say this was, what age were you at that point when your parents were setting up the matches?
I think I was
25,
24.
24.
Well, we met, I think, when I was 25. You were 26, right?
Yeah.
And we got married when, so I would have been 26 at that age.
Yeah.
You were 27.
How did it happen? How did you
Yeah,
meet?
tell us the romance.
Tell us about that moment, how you met and how it started.
Yeah, it's kind of, I actually had come to Chicago for a conference, and then I was going to crash at one of my younger brother had some friends here. And so I just basically wanted to skimp on the hotel, accommodation. So I just was going to crash on this other person's apartment. And he said, well, there's a party going on. Why don't you come with? And I said, no, I'm just too tired. And he really dragged me. He's like, no, you got to come. So I went very reluctantly. And literally at the party, Ruchir's the one that opened the door. And
that was at our house because we were living off campus. She was a grad student come up for the conference. And so just around campus, some of the folks there and our place was the place to hang out. And so she came over, but you don't remember me that first time, apparently. I remember her because her reputation really preceded her, because she was like this, and I'm absolutely like the black sheep and I married up, but she was like, what is it, the topper, or the top of her class,
valedictorian,
right? Architecture student. I mean, doing all this stuff. She's a classical singer, right? In Indian music and songs and all that, and you guys have to hear her.
I don't think we knew that.
Yeah. So, how's your voice feeling right now, Vallari?
That's not right now. So we had heard of her, okay, through this friend, and so we were kind of very impressed, and all of that, right? So but I think over that evening, that's when we first met. But then you came back for a conference, and this time, the other guy's place was full, and so we made room for you in our apartment. And then you needed, I think, to go out to Oak Brook, and I scrambled to borrow a car from my roommate to give her a ride, and I waited and brought her back. And so so we got to talking and realized that we connected and had a lot of common things, interests, and we were interested in similar things. And then we got to talking, and of course, email was just coming around at that point. She was in Champaign, I was in Chicago, and so we would now, I don't think this happens, we would write long emails, so letters, via emails, and then phone calls, and then eventually a lot of time up and down the highway here to Champaign, and so that's how we initially met and got to know each other.
When Vallari, when do you remember noticing Ruchir?
I would say that that second visit that he's talking about, that's when I really liked him, because obviously gave me a ride to go to this place, and then on the way back we started talking about architecture, and he drove me to see Frank Lloyd Wright's that whole his studio.
Good move.
Very good move in Oak Park. And that just kind of did me in. I was like, oh my gosh, he knows so much about architecture, though he's not an architect. And I think, and then
we share a common interest in art. And I remember we were debating right from the get-go, and I love to argue whatever point on either side, and so you would say something, and just to I would pick the counterpoint, and some of it was kind of obvious too, but I would pick the counterpoint and not make it an easy kind of conversation. And so I think we just connected and we talked, and we found some common interest. We love art. We both of us love art.
Yeah.
So we shared that. explored that. And um,
I mean, and we just right away got into like super deep conversations too, which was kind of
yeah,
fun, right? Like, I mean, just about metaphysics or some, random stuff like that, like just super deep into existentialism or something,
Yeah.
So
So you
it
kept
just
it
kind of,
light, kept it light.
yeah. Yeah. So I think that just,
I
and
think
then, yeah,
throughout the years, I would say we've always fallen back to those common areas of interest, or not fallen back is not the right word, but found those as kind of common interests that have persisted over all that time.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious about that because we're all in the same kind of stage with our kids being adults and trying to kind of shift from the project of raising kids. And you both did tremendous in terms of kind of they're alive and they're out of the house and you guys still like each other. Those
And
are the
they're
things that
they're
I
also
consider a success for parents.
they're also really great kids.
And they're great kids. But
thank you.
how's the transition been from where you have that shared focus to now back to the beginning?
We love it.
Yeah,
Absolutely love it.
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah.
My gosh, so I joke about this with my kids, but honestly, like when we take trips together as a family, there's like so much, like, I feel like it gets a little chaotic because, you have to kind of satisfy everyone's needs and stuff. But when the two of us are traveling, like it's like Zen, like we
Mm.
just get each other. We just, it's perfect. Like it's
Mm.
like the best time for me. Like I love it. So
Yeah, I think that, I mean, with COVID, the empty nesting kind of got delayed a little bit, which we loved and all of that. But now it's here and we are empty nesters. And we have a long list of things to, kind of pursue and interests that we want to explore further. And I think just giving ourselves more time and attention for ourselves
Yeah.
has been, right there on, on top of the list. And so we're trying to work our way towards that and do some of that. And we're, have looked forward and are enjoying, kind of that stage.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole new world, isn't it? Kind of having longer times to have conversations, and you guys have always had a lot of things in common. So it sounds like that's kind of what joined you at the beginning, some of those interests, and
mhm.
now are some of the things that keep you connected, right? We're all about having a shared purpose, and we think that's very helpful for a long-term relationship. So
I do joke with the people that, I think Netflix, I should become a shareholder because it's saving our marriage. Um, but yeah, half the time it's like, okay, what do you want to watch? What do you want to watch? And it takes the process to just find something in common. But no, yeah, go ahead, Tara. You were saying something.
yeah, no, I love that. I love that you're enjoying this new time, like without the kids, because it can be also a difficult transition for a lot of people because you put a lot of time and focus into all those activities we just talked about that we shared with you with our kids growing up, and then there's this empty space to fill sort of when they leave, and it can be a new time of identity and relationship stuff. We kind of are also interested in hearing, every relationship especially that's been going on for this long, has had some times that are challenging. So what people are really interested in hearing too is how do we get through those times? Like it's not perfect all the time for everybody. There's hard things that we go through together. There's sometimes, disagreements. Do you guys have an example of a time that was hard and what's been helpful for you in getting past it?
I think I can just, he probably knows exactly what I'm going to say, but um, the only time I would say that when we have come even close to, we actually don't uh, have fights,
Serious
unfortunately,
disagreement. Let's go
but
with that.
yeah, but serious disagreement is parenting. And I'm
Yeah.
sure you
I
probably,
was going to say the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. So
Parenting styles
exactly.
over the years of raising our kids and philosophies, right, really were the main things that we debated heavily, right? Is
Absolutely.
what's the right thing to do in certain situations, and
So
yeah, go ahead.
So
when you held two different kind of views on that, how'd you navigate it? How'd you find because you'd have to do something. So how'd you figure it out?
I think what I would say with that is, I, I don't know.
I don't think we did
I
figure it
don't
out.
think
I think it came from kind of the personas that we are, and so
Hmm.
it resolved to some degree on a point by point basis, but in most of the cases it kind of continued as we were. I mean, to put some color to this,
Yeah.
I'm very laid back, and I come from the school that you learn by, kind of falling on your knees, or, kind of stumbling a bit. That's how you build calluses and learn and grow from experience. Valerie is very much, anxious about, is there a program where the kids kind of, doing certain things, and if they're kind of off that program, she gets really anxious and she's on them, and so for her it was like, hey, how can you be so laid back? And for me, it was like, why are you on them so much?
Yeah.
Um,
This sounds
and
familiar.
and to me it was like, unless it's catastrophic, I was actually very happy to see them fail, and I was very happy to say, okay, let them struggle and let them fail.
Hmm.
And for Valerie, it was like, how could it be that they should fail at all? And we need to kind of push them and so on. So
exactly.
I don't know that that really was ever really resolved. I think we had some pretty serious disagreements about it. I might have given her the space at times.
Yes, I was just gonna say.
Maybe both styles were actually needed in the home
Mm.
Hmm.
to, kind of balance each other. And I think, there was only so much that I could push myself towards her. And so after a while, maybe you might either give up or give me the space to do, whatever I was doing with the kids. But we did have disagreements about parenting styles. Yeah.
I think what happened in large measure is that being a parent or parenting made me grow up, like made me understand a lot of things that I actually felt, good about. Like now when I look back, I feel that I was kind of wired and like anxious about things where Ruchir would temper things down, and I kind of needed that.
Hmm.
So I feel like, if anything, it was just more of growing up that I had to do, and in the same way growing up that he had to do. And we recognize that, like, I think both of us had the self awareness to understand that, okay, we are going through this growth right now,
Mm.
so let's just leave this room for each other to grow into, like me to be a little bit more relaxed,
Hmm.
him to kind of maybe appreciate what I was saying about, hey, you're spoiling the kids or whatever, like I think both of us kind of actually uh went through this major growth while as we were parenting.
Yeah.
That's how I look at it.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, we were pretty clear that we didn't know what we were doing when we started out. And so we kind of learned along as we, and figured it all out, I suppose, as everyone does. But I think that's a good summary. I think those were the different philosophies that caused some conflict with us.
Well,
Yeah.
and kind of what I'm hearing is there was trust of like, even though I wouldn't do that, or whatever, either be more relaxed or more planned out, there was trust, and both of you trusted the other, that you had the best interest of your relationship and the kids in mind, even though it was different. And that gave you talked about it as space, Ruchir,
Yeah.
that gave space to kind of be able to hold that difference and not see it as an end thing because you don't trust.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a good way to say it. And I think maybe our kids have also felt that, and they're smart, right? The kids are sharp and smart, as we know, and so they kind of sense, and they also found a way to balance and kind of,
Yeah.
find a path
Well,
forward, right?
what we've learned about kids is they know which parent to go to when they want it a certain way.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah, they
That's
figure that
true.
out real fast.
Yes. Yeah.
So with
100%.
parenting, what's your expectation about marriage for your kids? Thinking about the families that you came from and kind of the arranged marriages and expectations, what expectations do you have for marriage for the next generation?
I actually have none. I just want both of them to have a partner, just because I know, I mean, how precious it is. I mean, I'm in such an amazing partnership that I would want nothing else.
Mm.
for my kids. And so, I mean, we don't like in terms of cultural stuff, like, I mean, both our kids, I mean, they've dated like, you know, non-Indian people, and I have had no issues about any of that. I mean, we don't have any, I mean, I don't have any expectations at all in that regard. So,
Yeah, I don't have any. My thing with the kids has always been like I hope that they're happy and confident,
Yeah.
and if they are, then the rest will sort of work out. And I'm talking about life in general, of course. I mean, like everything, every aspect of their life. So yeah, in certainly in terms of relationships or partnerships or marriage or whatever, there's no expectation at all. Whatever they figure, as long as they're happy and confident, that's my main hope for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
so.
that's a whole new fun phase of parenting too, because you'll start to get some new kids added to your family if they find a partner. Another question, just kind of following up on that, through some of those disagreements and things, and it sounds like you guys found a way to balance that out with appreciating your differences. I'm sure not always in smooth and easy ways. We all have times where it doesn't feel easy until we're past it. But what did you learn about yourselves and just about marriage in general through some of that stuff?
I would say that, I think that for a marriage to be successful, like we have always felt that it's important to have some things that are common. But then the other thing that is important, I feel, is um, self-awareness. And from self-awareness also comes understanding each other. Because if you know yourself, then you know the other person also. And I think lastly, I would say that copious amount of trust, where you know that, the other person's got your back, that kind of trust. Like if you have a hard fall, there's something there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For me, I mean, I when we had SARS, of course, our first child, it kind of all clicks, and you realize that there's really no other feeling in the world that compares.
Yeah.
And then you wonder, like, well, why did we, wait so long, etc. Um, so to me, really from that point on, starting this journey of raising kids, there's always this thing that you're doing something incredible and amazing, and having children and raising children, it's quite a compelling thing. So to me, that was sort of that grounding rock, right? That we are a family, and families forever. And so on. And then I would say, yeah, I mean, having the common um, interests and that common ground that we've always shared, always kind of we brought that into our lives, into our kids' lives as a family. We've enjoyed many of these interests and found that common ground, and I think that's been really wonderful.
And I think, like, Ruchir also looks, I mean, he's really into sports, but he, right from when the kids were little, like, I feel like he did a lot of things with the family that were like sort of more team oriented. So it's like he would always say, like, team Ranjan, and like before we start something, we would do some, like fist bumps and, exactly,
Yeah.
Yeah.
all of that stuff. So I think, those little things, we have like our own little rituals for everything, for
Yeah.
and all of those things have piled on to kind of layer one thing on top of each other to make the foundation strong, right? Like, so,
Mm-hmm.
I think then uh, the kids really feel rooted, within
Yeah.
the family structure. And I feel like that's really important. And, it's been just really such a blessing that now that the kids are older, they actually, say those things back to us that, hey, we feel safe with you, or we feel that, we have your support, unconditional support. And that means a lot to us, So I think that, um, yeah, I feel like that's probably made our marriage so much better.
Yeah, we love the idea of traditions and rituals like that that kind of build your foundation, as you said. Do you have some examples of some of the rituals you've built in to your relationship? Things that you always do or that you can count on?
I remember for a while there, we were doing this silly thing where we would. Did we actually call them family team meetings? And we had a little sheet of,
Yes,
what did you do and what are you gonna do and what's on your. And so it was.
it's my
We
idea.
didn't want to be very prescriptive about you ought to do this or ought to do that. So we would all go around saying, well, what did I? And this wasn't like like a daily, weekly thing, but it was periodic, and we would say, hey, here's what's on my mind and here's the big things that I'm planning, or something like that. That was a silly thing. So we would actually have these like little
And
sheets printed out that we would kind of write into on the family table and then discuss together, right? That was one. But we also do this fun thing where we do painting, right, and sketching, and
yeah,
we'll do that, some of that as a family, as a the kids will
we
see
have like
that.
an art day where, all of them would paint the same thing, like a Bob Ross, thing. And then it would be like a guessing game. We would take that up and like ask all our relatives, like which one is, who's painted which one, that kind of thing. But then, we also have these other things like for like Christmas, we go to Cosley Zoo and we'll pick out the tree, and
Right.
the kids love that, just
Mm.
it's really kind of become ritualistic, like
Yeah.
the day after.
Cooking together.
Yeah, exactly. And then we have this family cheesecake that
Right. We
it's
perfected this recipe of the family cheesecake, and in all things, in an instant pot,
yeah,
we make a cheesecake, which is
What?
fabulous. Yes,
Wow.
and we will have you try that recipe. That is the famous Ranjan
yes,
recipe,
yeah,
copied off of the internet, by the way. But that's okay.
yeah.
We love
So, and
especially
then,
traditions around food are the best.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think, we have, some other little things, but those are like the big ones. Yeah.
So I have a question of how have you surprised each other over the past 29 years? What has surprised you about each other? So Ruchir, what's surprised you about Vallari?
Some things are predictable. I'm giving you time to think. Some things are predictable. But sometimes, yeah.
I didn't like for us. I didn't quite understand Tara's addiction to adrenaline when we first got married, and it still surprises me the crazy stuff she wants to do, like defensive bodyguard driving and learning how to kind of do a power slide into a parking spot, and I just don't. It just shocks
That's just
me
for
every
fun
time
when I go to the grocery store.
Yeah, watch out at
Yeah.
Jewel. Don't go when she's trying to drive her defensive driving practice.
Yeah. No, I mean, I walked into our marriage, and we had not lived together before we got married, and I felt like I ran into a buzzsaw because the first
Explain,
the,
Ruchir.
the first year of our marriage was probably pretty hard on both of us, right? Is that fair to say? I mean,
Yes.
first year and a half, and really, I was again very like laid back. Can I say chaotic, disorganized? Let's just call it.
Yeah,
And
unstructured.
Unstructured and very much.
David is loving this.
Valerie was very much the opposite, right? Where she's super organized, very well put together. I came into our marriage with debt, even in those days, and she came into it, and I was working and I was in debt. You were a graduate student,
And I had some
and you had savings, and so I just walked into like this situation where like, what is going on? And I was like, wait, why are you touching all my papers that are? And she's like, I'm touching them because you have paychecks that you haven't cashed in like 9 months that are expired. And I was like, no, but I know exactly where every piece of paper is. Please don't touch it. And she was. So look, the disorganization thing that has had to meld over time was sort of a shock to the system. And then
Yeah.
I would say over the years, again, putting parenting aside, I think Valerie's interests have really evolved. Like, the different things that you've taken on, evolution of a career, but it's really blended in with your interest, your own architecture practice, and then lately, photography and how much you love nature. All of that has been, great to see unfold, and not what part of the original kind of charter was, and so it's been somewhat of a very pleasant surprise and nice to see you take on, like you're chasing sunsets and taking photographs and And look at the photography thing; it's turned into a whole exhibit, etc. Right? So I mean, it's huge. It's those things have been really, really great surprises. Yeah.
I think, yeah, for me, I would say that, uh, I mean, barring that initial thing that he already touched on, like that was that was actually really shocking to me.
Yeah,
Like,
disaster in the
yeah,
making.
I had no idea that this is what I'm getting into. But honestly, like, I think what has been really surprising for me has been to see that Ruchir, like, I guess the amount of trust he has in humanity at large just keeps shocking me, actually, just
Mm.
shocking me. Like, people call him, all kinds of things,
You're
like,
calling me naive.
yes, like gullible or whatever. But even though, like, like, if you were to like cheat him or destroy him or whatever, like, the amount of it's kind of like actually shocking that,
Well, I generally see good in people. I
yeah,
don't
I
think
mean,
I'm
you
very
just cannot,
skeptical.
yes, you cannot bring him down. Like, I mean, even if someone's like proven that this person is a, whatever, like a bandit, let's say, or something, or a con man, he would still have a hard time, painting him black fully, so that part, like, over a stretch of almost 30 years, to see that again and again has been like simply shocking.
Simply traumatic.
Like, it's just it is a shock to my system that how can you still, like, but it's amazing. Like, I love that about him, but it's also been just really like, okay, this is going to be the year when he, like, okay, this is going to be the person that's going to, no, this is going to be the situation. No, it's like
Yeah.
every time, like, so yeah, so that's been really, really shocking, actually, so.
Shocking and beautiful. But for Valerie, for you and I, let's seize, we're optimistic pessimists. We're pretty sure things are going to go bad. It's
I
hard.
am that.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's hard to kind of embrace in our head that people can see. I think about like photography, that's how he's framing the world, right? And it's hard when we frame it a little bit
Yeah, and I
differently.
loved the way you just said that both about each other, because that's one thing we love about you. We've been friends long enough to have observed you for a while, and you can feel the deep trust that you have for each other, the deep respect for each other. And I love being in your presence because I can feel that there's a very steady love and trust, and you entertain so well, and you're so curious about the world. Ruchir is such a good listener at a dinner party. He just wants to hear everybody's story. And Valerie's the biggest cheerleader of everyone who has, everyone that has something good go good in their life. You've always been the biggest supporter of people in the
Thank you.
neighborhood. So
That's kind of you to say that. Yeah.
I mean, it's
Well,
no
unfortunately, it's
secret. We
true.
love
We're
you.
not making stuff up. So if it wasn't true, we would tell you the other way too. It'd be like, oh, well, and I think you've been an encouragement, and we kind of want to end with, what piece of encouragement or advice would you have for young couples, people coming along, singles thinking about partnership, that what do they need to make it last, a year, let alone 30 years?
Yeah.
That's easy for me because I actually have young people, like our neighbors' kids, they come to me for some reason. I mean, guys, like, 30-year-olds that, hey, I'm, trying to find a girl, but I keep running into this issue. And they come to us for advice. It's kind of interesting that we've reached that mentorship level without having any practice, really. But I just had a conversation with telling this to this person that I think that the best way to really get into a relationship is to really fully comprehend the fact that no one's perfect, and that you yourself are also full of imperfection, and to actually embrace that, like, be vulnerable and, embrace that imperfection in that person. And, if you can see yourself laughing, having a good time, and then coming back and wanting some more of that, and then coming back and wanting more again, that's a really good, cue. And then you need to kind of follow that, I feel like these days in the modern society, what happens is people get reluctant because they feel like, oh, maybe I can hold out and get something better. But there is, they don't really uh, figure it out that, sometimes it's important to look at the now, the present, and see how things are actually working for you at the moment and not overanalyze. Like I feel like people overanalyze things. That's just my take. I'll let
Yeah.
you say.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, in my view, it's simply that what you think you're starting out with is not what it's going to be forever. Look back at any stage of your life, whether it's take a school year or take a friendship that you've had. I mean, how it starts is not how it evolves and stays, and so you just need to know that it's going to be changing forever, and you have to have a constant kind of a open mind or learning mind where you're going to
Yeah.
be absorbing, learning, adjusting, be open to different things, and be committed to the journey that you're taking on with your partner, because that's the commitment that you're making. So it's not that okay, I have this feeling now and I need to hold on to this feeling, or this is how it's going to be forever. No, absolutely not. And it's going to go through lots of kind of evolutions and stages and phases, and it's just that you're committing to take that journey with that person, but the journey is going to have lots of changes. And the other thing is that, in my view, I mean, don't stress out about stuff. Don't stress about small things. Don't sweat the small stuff. Those things just don't matter. And it's all about kind of human relationships, family, people, connections. The rest really doesn't matter. It all gets figured out. So those would be my two pieces of advice.
Those are great.
Wow. I'm going to have to go back and re-listen to all of this.
That's
You
right.
guys have shared so many good things, and I can't wait to share it with everyone else. So thank you so much for spending this time with us, and we'll do it again.
Yeah,
Thank
that
you.
was fun.
This was a lot of fun.
Thanks for inviting us.
Thanks for being with us today. We hope you'll get more information about everything we talked about today on our show notes page on the website.
I was going to say, where could we find the show notes page?
withupodcast.com.
Awesome.
And also, while you're at it, we would love for you to subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review, and let us know what you're thinking.
Can we ask that it's only good reviews?
You can ask anything you want.
Okay, leave good reviews. We would love to hear from you and respond. So
Thanks for listening.
see you next time.